All right, everybody. So we have finally gotten the long-awaited news. I say long, but it's really just been like 24 hours. We have gotten the long-awaited promised court documents drop that Judge Chutkan of Trump's election interference case has promised to drop. Yesterday, we got the news that there would be this big bombshell hitting, and now it is finally released. The only problem is, usually, the most damning evidence against Trump, it's not like these exciting, overblown culture war nonsense issues that the right likes to blow up. These conspiracies about, like, Hunter Biden being a pedophile or something like that, right? Like, these things easily catch headlines and very much the allegations get around far faster than even the debunks can because they're just such out there insane allegations. And that's the benefit the right has in everything they say being bullshit. There's no limit to how out of pocket the things they can say for attention can be. There's never any consequences socially or tangibly for just lying in the most overt and insane way you can possibly manage to get as much attention on you as possible. So for the right, or for the left I should say, when some massive bombshell comes out about Trump, let's just say the average voter isn't going to know shit about it unless they watch mainstream news that breaks it down in, depth, or if they're willing to read dozens, if not hundreds of pages of court documentation. This stretches all the way back to the collusion with Russia stuff that happened, where multiple of Trump's highest up, right-hand men were convicted for ties with Russia. And to this day, even, the majority of Americans think the Russiagate thing was just a hoax. That was a character assassination on Trump. And since that point, because to find out all this damning info, you have to read court documents, the right has been able to skid by on this narrative, this completely false one, by the way, that Trump is completely innocent and that the left is constantly attacking him and trying to character assassinate him with lawfare. When in reality, it's just he is so constantly breaking the law and has such a massive criminal history, he's always having evidence coming out about him in court documents, but no one wants to read them. And if no one wants to read them, then it's easy to lie about their contents. But that's not going to be happening today, because we got a video here from Midas Touch. Pretty good political news coverage channel I found. They are definitely pretty biased to the left, and obviously that might sound like a good thing, but I have found that sometimes their coverage can be a little sensationally, like I'll see the title and I'll be like, whoa, dude, that's crazy, and then I'll click it and it's like, okay, well they're overblowing it a little bit here because they know that this agrees with the perspective of a lot of people on the left, but isn't necessarily a completely accurate depiction of what's happening. It's a little exaggeratory. It's never false, but it's sometimes the bias is clear, right? The bias is clear. So I like Midas Touch, and reality has a liberal bias, so generally the reporting is factual, but I will say that it is a pretty biased source. If you had I don't know, a bias checker site or something, an independent bias checker site, I'm pretty sure they'd find Midas Touch is pretty left-leaning, which I'm happy to say, considering they've got 3.23 million subscribers. It goes to show that there is actually an audience for progressive news content online. And it does exist. I actually didn't know Midas Touch was as big as it was until recently, and it actually is one of the biggest left-wing outlets on the internet. That's not even a joke, it just is. Anyway, let's check out this video. They put this out today, just a few hours ago. Judge finally drops evidence bomb on Trump. Let's see what has come out of this, because God knows I'm not sitting down and reading the 100+ pages of court documentation, but I do want to know what's going on. I do want to know what's been found. I want to know what's up. I have to know.
Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF with Karen Friedman Agnifilo and Michael Popok, because we've gotten our hot little hands, on over 2,000 pages of evidence against
That's a lot
Donald
of pages.
Trump that was required to be filed by Judge Chutkan of the DC election interference case as part of her process in the public to review the superseding indictment against the immunity decision by the United States Supreme Court and make her ultimate ruling. There's no other way to do it but that in the public, because the public has access and has a right to access to all of this information, subject to some redaction.
Realistically, the only positive impact this can have on the election is Trump getting arrested before the election and being in jail during it. and after. Like, besides that, this does not influence voters. If anything, it just makes Trump supporters more ironclad in their delusional belief that any legal consequences for Trump's lawbreaking is just lawfare the Dems and the libs are going after him with to attack him, right? So many of them say, they word for word, they grade Trump on a curve. Trump does a bad thing, and Biden does an equally bad thing. Like, that literally just means they consider it worse for Biden to have done it than for Trump to have done it. No reason. They just outright state they grade Trump on a curve, because I guess if you word it that way, it sounds reasonable to do that. Like, Trump, like, there's an average Trump must, it's like, it's the most bizarre shit ever. Like, they just basically admit that Trump's actions will always be seen as less bad than equal actions committed by a different person on the left. They just word it in a funny way that sounds smart. But it just means that. That's just what that means.
And some blackouts and some tape that we're going to talk about. But finally, after rejecting Donald Trump's last-minute Hail Mary, there's no other way to frame it, he was given 7 days to evaluate his litigation options, and the best he could come up with was to file a ridiculous bit of gibberish at the last minute yesterday, asking the judge, pretty please, can you just not publish this until after the election? I mean, basically what he was asking for, and the judge took one look at it, did a little Heisman move with the...
What's so funny about this, by the way, is that Trump has been delaying this for years now. Like, actual years now, Trump has been delaying this, and he's been doing it because he wanted it to be after this election. But the judge has stopped it and is now forcing all this to go public weeks before the election. Trump fucked himself, pushed this as much as possible, hoping to get it past the election, and instead it's locked in and stuck as close to the election as it could reasonably be without being effectively after it. Trump really tried to wiggle out of this having any impact on the election or being seen before the election, and it just completely fucked him. He delayed it way too much. He should have had this all happen like years ago if he was smart. People would have memory holed it by now.
The special counsel, I got this, and said, no. And I am immediately, or at least when the clerk shows up tomorrow morning today and her cup of coffee, I'm going to give her a couple of minutes. She's going to publish the entirety. We now know, and having now gotten into it, there's 4 volumes. It's pushing over between, I think it's like 1,500 to 2,000 total pages. The volumes are broken down into sort of groups of information, categories of information. And to be clear, we're going to give a high-level review, Karen and me, right here, of what we were able to pick out in just about an hour of going through thousands and thousands of pages, many of them redacted, but others not. We're going to be doing deep dive hot takes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, unless you've got like a superhuman reading speed, I don't know if it's been long enough since the files released for us to have anyone who's read every last bit of it yet. Like, I think maybe by tomorrow morning someone will have, but I don't think anyone's a fast enough reader to have finished the thousands of pages by now. It depends on, like, the font and spacing and everything. Like, maybe it's just really inefficient on paper, but, like, I don't know. I'm imagining really small, like, confined text, you know? Like, a bit of a hard read. That's kind of what I'm picturing right now. Do we have a link, actually, to the files themselves? I forgot. So many of the top news sites, because they pay Google to put them at the top, they hit you at the paywall right away. It's such like a scummy like system they've got going. Like, they pay Google to be the top result for any news thing you look up. You click it, immediately you're hit with a paywall after seeing like 5 ads, and then it's like, oh, okay, so not only do I have to see the ads, but then you also hit me with a paywall so I can't read the page anyway, and so you make as much money as possible. Especially, like, it's so scummy.
Network, including with Ben and others and Karen and me, and on Legal AF MTN, the new channel that we created almost for this moment in order to capture all of this law and politics stuff and do it over there. So between the two, by the weekend is over, you will know every bit of detail and morsel that we pick up. But we picked up some fun things in the last hour, so we wanted to come on really quickly as breaking news and not keep you in suspense any longer. Karen, let me turn it over to you. You got it first. You had a chance to kind of go through the first pass of 1 through 4 volumes. Why don't you kind of give an overview, high-level overview of what you found interesting already about it, and then I'll do my part in that, and then we'll, like I said, this is a series. We're going to be doing a series of episodic hot takes that, but by the end of them, by the time you've watched all 7 or 8 of them, you will know exactly what a level and amounts of evidence against Donald Trump there really is. I think he's dead to rights.
So this was a huge, huge data dump that Jack Smith has done in support of his memory.
The problem is, if there's no real legal consequence, as it might have some effect on the electorate, but like the problem is that I just don't see voters being influenced that much, because everyone, it seems like And I could be wrong, but it seems like most people who supported Kamala / Biden always did, really. Like, as soon as they were the nominees, they did. And that Trump has just had his set base that's, like, granted shrunk a bit, but, like, I don't know if Trump's base has grown a significant amount. It seems like it's shrinking. Like, his fundamental, like, most hardcore supporters. So I don't know. Maybe the Republicans who just believe that they believe his, like, talking points and they vote for him because he's the Republican candidate, maybe less of those people are going to end up being involved because they think he's crooked. It's really hard to tell until the election happens, right? Like, he could end up getting bigger total numbers than he's had in any of the previous 2 elections, right?
Memorandum that he filed describing all of the evidence and all of the reasons why the evidence is not subject to this new legal doctrine created by the United States Supreme Court in July of this year called presidential immunity. This is exactly what the United States Supreme Court told them to do. They ordered this judge to review every possible piece of evidence and say, is this something that is part of President Trump's core presidential duties, and therefore he would be immune from prosecution for that conduct, and Jack Smith cannot use any evidence that would be subject to this immunity. And so he instructed this analysis. And so Jack Smith filed this huge memo that was 180 something pages long, and it was very substantive, and it talked about in detail all of the evidence, everything that's going to come in. It was like an opening statement almost. This is what I anticipate the evidence to show. But like an opening statement at trial, it has to be backed up by the evidence, right? It's not enough to just say this is what the evidence is. You have to back it up. And so that's what an appendix is. And the appendix was very...
So this is one of the things that's really frustrating. No undecided voters are going to read the thousands of pages of court documents. I think that it's most important. I think as we get more of this stuff unredacted, oh my God, what is up with my fucking burping? Jesus. I feel like what needs to be done is, as stuff gets unredacted, we need the most damning evidence itself to be headlines. The Republicans are so good at making up something really crazy and out of pocket and turning it into a talking point or a headline that you cannot escape. It's everywhere, all over your home pages and being shoved down your throat as if it's a real serious story. And then it always ends up being bullshit, and then they forget about it. They memory hole the fact that something that was supposed to be the biggest bombshell ever for the 100 billionth time didn't pan out, and they memory hole it, right? Hell, if they get proven to be completely wrong, they create a new conspiracy to make their claims being disproven actually evidence that they were even more right than they previously claimed. A really good example of this, cognitive dissonance in Republican voters, is Floridians in the wake of Hurricane Milton. A lot of them are saying, this is just including DeSantis, are saying that this has nothing to do with climate change. The climate alarmists are just trying to freak you out. And that this is just crazy tropical weather, and Floridians are used to this. The conservative people in Florida who have had their houses destroyed are working on rebuilding them in the exact same spots, believing the worst is well behind us. This climate change shit ain't real. It's just some crazy tropical weather. Seems like we probably got another 100 years before another storm like this comes along. Glad we got it out of the way. They don't know that this is part of a trend that's only getting worse, and that when they rebuild, they'll be lucky if another hurricane doesn't flood their house before they're finished remodeling. That it's genuinely getting that frequent and that bad. And I'm not joking or exaggerating when I say that. So yeah, these people will find a way to like they did with the hurricane, where they turned it into a conspiracy about the Democrats controlling the weather to try and kill Republicans before the election. Right? Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, a bunch of other big conservative posters were claiming this. Yeah. They'll get proven that they'll have evidence come out like ironclad that Trump is a piece of shit, all these court documents that he's like guilty. And they see it's that all that stuff's existence is further evidence that Trump is the best and that the swamp is going after him because he cares about the American people. And that's his only crime, guys. That's his only crime, is he just cares so much about the American people. And if they can do it to him, then they can do it to anybody. If they could charge you for trying to subvert the U.S. election, they can do it to anybody, guys.
very much, this is the evidence backing up the words in the memo. That was Jack Smith's opening statement of what his trial is going to be, what he expects the evidence to show. And so we've been waiting for this evidence because, again, it's one thing to say this is what happened, right? You've got Jack Smith saying one thing, you've got Trump claiming something else. So show me the evidence. Let's see what it is. Back it up with proof. That's what a trial is for. And that's what's going to happen. And so we've been anticipating and waiting for this for a while. And as you said, Pope Hawk, there's 4 volumes, thousands of pages, and they group them in types of documents. And a lot of it, first of all, when sometimes things are redacted, you see lots of words on pages, and you'll see like a sentence blacked out. This is very different. This has page after page after page. That's just blank.
Holy
it says
shit.
Redacted, that the pages are sealed. And so they're just white pieces of paper throughout, a couple pure black pieces of paper, and then some blacked out of names and any personal identifying information. Now, we're not surprised that this was heavily redacted because Jack Smith said in this memo that a lot's going to be redacted. And so, it's interesting because Donald Trump, as you said, did this last ditch, don't put this out into the world. We don't want this out there until ours comes out. It'll be very one-sided. It's just very interesting because prosecutors don't really want to do this either. Jack Smith doesn't want to show all his evidence to everybody and let everyone pick it apart.
It's obviously the right is going to immediately jump to get like hyper defensive, and the allegations are going to start flying out because that's how the right gets. They don't get defensive, they get offensive. So I wonder, is there just not really going to be like I'm going to honestly say right now, I don't predict what comes out from these court documents having any real impact on Trump. Like so much so to the extent that Trump might barely, if at all, respond to what comes out. Partially, I think it's just the fact that the information is so deep, and on another hand, I think it's that, like, man, the American people don't really seem to give a shit if Trump specifically is colluding with another country or trying to overturn democracy. It almost seems like the consideration is that, of course, Trump is a sore loser who will try to steal the election. That's a given. But why else should we dislike him, right? That's kind of the way that a lot of Trump supporters operate. Yeah, he is that, but why else should I dislike him? I'm okay with that. A lot of them will literally just own it to that level. Have you seen Trump supporters bite the bullet like that? Because they'll do it. They'll outright say, well, yeah, but that's not a deal breaker. If they genuinely, truly can't defend something, they'll just outright do that, because that is part of the whole grading Trump on a curve thing. I just don't think this changes any votes, Like, hell, the American people have had the court documents from the Paul Manafort shit, multiple, I forget what the name that's ascribed to the Russia shit. Like, everybody knows that whole court thing by a particular name. It was the original claim of Trump's campaign colluding with Russia. Multiple of his campaign members and higher-ups got convicted, found guilty. They were knowingly. Well, yeah, I think it was the Steele dossier. Thank you. But I think it was what that came from, what resulted in that coming out, the court case. But yeah, that's been out for years now, years and years and years, and nobody. Yes, the Mueller report. Thank you. Yeah, the Mueller report, the Steele dossier. These court, even the court papers, the files from all that have been out for years now, and the American people don't care. The Russia collusion thing is thought of as a hoax, or just a tree not worth barking up by even a lot of Democrat voters. And that's why I don't think these bombshells that are unfortunately ironclad legal documentation are anywhere near as effective as the bullshit the right just pulls out of their ass, makes people believe for 2 weeks, gets disproven, and then memory holes it. Like the Haitians thing, right? The Haitians eating dogs thing, it's already been memory holed. I told you that was what was going to happen. When it all hit, the day that started to be a thing, I predicted how it was all going to go. There's a few videos that probably seem to depict what is being claimed here. There's probably a video of a homeless woman having a mental breakdown and killing a dog or something that went viral on the internet. That got turned into a narrative about Haitian people kidnapping and eating dogs and cats. And then the right ran with it. They're going to repeat it for as long as they can. It'll get debunked and shat on and then turn out to be completely untrue, which it did way faster than I expected because J.D. Vance admitted that it was made up and false. And then it's already memory hold. I predicted that within 2 weeks of that claim getting disproven, they would memory hole it, and no one would be talking about it anymore. There have been so many similar situations where they just run with something insane, it gets debunked, and then they memory hole it. Everyone forgets. They just they just throw so much shit at the wall that you can't remember it anymore. There's so much shit you can't keep track of all of their nonsense, right?
Prosecutors don't love to give over all their evidence in advance. You want to save it for trial. This is going to give Trump a huge opportunity to prep, to know what witnesses are saying, to tailor his testimony potentially. I mean, you just never know. So it's just funny to me that somehow Trump thinks this is something Jack Smith wants to do. I didn't get that impression. And the reason I say this is because I think he over redacted. I think he redacted more than he probably needed to. And I think he was acting like a cautious prosecutor who's like, I don't need everything out in the open. I can describe what it is, but I don't need everyone picking apart every last word and having this tried in the court of public opinion, much to our chagrin, right? We would all love that.
Yeah, once again, any playing kid gloves with Trump is just bad. Like, Trump would never impart the same charitability, right? Like, Trump is the kind of person who takes advantage of the system having procedures to get away with, like, not having any justice done on him. At a certain point, like, the reason RICO charges exist is because we recognize a criminal individual and might be part of an organization that is so corrupt and with so many connections that, like, through normal legal processes, you can't charge them and find them guilty despite everyone knowing they're part of a criminal enterprise. That's why RICO charges exist, which is what Trump was hit with. It's so that you can do a deeper dive and figure out connections and, like, a stronger case that isn't so locked in with a procedure and can consider the context of a broader conspiracy, which might work to keep a guilty individual from being found guilty, and has in the past, by the way.
So there's a lot.
I'm pretty sure RICO charges were specifically invented or, like, were introduced into law to fight the mob, by the way. Like, that's why I'm pretty sure they, like, first came to be a thing, was so that the U.S. government could go after the mob, because the mob was so effective in making sure that no single person could get pinned too badly and have connections to the organization. And there was just, they gamed it out, knowing the system and how to fuck with it. They would make sure to divide work and just plan things out in such a way where it made it very hard for the U.S. government to go after the mob. And they had to introduce certain ways of conducting investigations and trials in order to consider the amount of corruption, connections, and sliminess that the mob would operate on. And Trump uses those same exact mob tactics. Like, he was literally thought of as, like, a modern day, like, real estate, like, mobster guy. That was his persona before he was the president guy.
A lot of redactions, and then some stuff that we saw were things that have already been part of the public record. Newspaper articles, tweets that we've seen, press release.
Also, in every whistleblower that has, like, been part of Trump's team or known him behind the scenes says that he talks like, he and his, like, goons, his literal goons, talk like mobsters. I'm not even joking. They're like, yeah, Mr. Trump's not going to like that very much. We should probably move this. We don't want the boss to see it. They call him the boss, by the way. They literally, like a fucking mobster's goons, they call him the boss. And, you know, because he's in New York, and it's at, like, Trump Tower, they got that New York accent. And they're like, oh, we got to move this before the boss gets here.
This is Mike Pence's book. They've highlighted portions of his book, and there's lots of pages of that. And you ask yourself, so why would they put that in here? Why does that need to go in here? What they're really doing is they need to identify for the court what is the evidence that they anticipate they're going to potentially introduce. So they might introduce, because what you don't want is the judge hasn't ruled on this one piece of evidence in advance. And so all of a sudden the trial has to stop because they're putting something into evidence. And like, wait a minute, judge, you didn't rule on whether this one piece of evidence is subject to presidential immunity or not. So Jack Smith is being overly cautious in every piece of evidence that he wants to put in, including things that are matters of public record, like newspaper articles and press releases and transcripts from certain court proceedings, et cetera. It's all in here. And so that is what's highly unusual, but the judge has to make this determination of what's immune, what's not. Now, so in addition to a lot of redacted stuff and a lot of public stuff, there's a lot of...
I just think a disservice was done. Any possible service that this entire bombshell could have provided was undone by the redacting, in my opinion. I think as much info as could have been put out there should have been put out there. And it's just like, it's so insane to watch as Trump, like, encourages his supporters to threaten the family of the judge, and the judge still uses kid gloves. It's like, I get you're so good at your job. Like, you're so good at doing what you are supposed to do. But this is a situation where this guy, who you know is guilty, everyone knows he's guilty. His supporters know he's guilty. They don't care. We have to pretend he's not, play kid gloves. He will obstruct justice at every turn, and we've got to pretend like he's a special case. It's like, how has he not been found in contempt of court 15 times already? Hey, Every Gretel, good to see you.
Transcripts from the select committee on Jan 6. Again, things we've seen before. But, seeing it again was sort of interesting. There's also some stuff on January 4th and 5th, these lunch at the Willard Hotel, phone calls that are made, records related to various PACs, et cetera. And so, there was a lot in there that just you kind of are reminded of how much was going on in those days leading up to January 6th and then January 6th. And, so one of the things I thought was sort of interesting is you've got Donald Trump on January 6th talking to various people. We don't know who because the names are redacted. Someone's bringing him a Diet Coke. They're joking around, but he's watching TV and watching all this happen.
This is what I mean, yeah. He has been found in contempt multiple times, and none of it included jail time because everyone's too scared to jail him. Exactly. No judge wants to be, for the rest of their life having to look over their shoulder because, their family and them are in the, targets of one of the most fanatical, generally mentally ill collections of people on the planet. It would be like if Jeffrey Dahmer had a fan base back when he was an operating serial killer, and if everyone was too afraid to charge him because the fan base of fanatic weirdos that are obsessed with him and want to marry him would literally try to murder any prosecutor who tried to put him in prison. That is essentially the situation we're in right now. Legitimately, there's no way prosecutors and judges don't know that Trump supporters will make sure they are never, ever able to feel safe if they are the ones behind Trump going to jail. That's an unspoken realization anybody who has the opportunity to put Trump in jail has to contend with, right? That not just them, but their families will be in danger of one of the most insane and large groups of collective people in the country if they're behind taking down Trump. So to a degree, I wonder if there is any individual who would be willing to go so far as to actually put Trump in jail because they'd never be able to feel safe again. Trump supporters would certainly never let them feel safe. I can't say they would act on, and engage in violence. I think they would, but they would certainly threaten to.
And he's just talking about it like he's watching it like a spectator and enjoying it and drinking his Diet Coke. And so it just gives you a flavor of kind of what it was like on that day to be around him, all the people coming in to try to talk to him.
I don't know why, but the idea of just the president drinking Diet Coke just sounds funny to me.
And what he was doing. But there was one piece of evidence or one thing that came in here that really struck me. And Salty, I'm going to ask you to put up the thing that I showed you as a transcript. And it was a conversation, I don't know with who, but it's transcripts from a conversation. So the Q is question, the A is the answer. And it says, how did you learn of that? Answer, the Speaker of the House told me that I might be getting a call from the President of the United States and advised me that my display on my phone would say spam risk Egypt. That was my notification for the fact that it might be him. And question, was the Speaker of the House at the time, whoever it was? Answer, correct. And did he tell you that you already spoken to the president about coming to the White House? Answer, I believe.
Dude, imagine being a fucking politician and suddenly you get a call on your cell phone that says spam risk Egypt. I'd be a little do I answer it? Who do I talk to about this? Who's calling my personal cell?
So spam risk Egypt. So if you continue on, and I don't have it up here, but if you continue on the transcript, he got a phone call from the
who in Egypt knows my phone number?
President of the United States, this gentleman who is testifying here in this transcript. He got a phone call and it showed up, Egypt. Okay, what does that tell me? It tells me this is the kind of stuff we used to do when I was a prosecutor. Okay, we used to see people in the mafia and drug dealers, etc., or cyber criminals. These sophisticated criminals would.
I will tell you, I did not pre-watch this shit, but yeah, like I said before, even I'm not a criminal law expert, right? I don't know this shit, but everything about Trump just rings mafia stuff to me. It just sounds so similar to when the U.S. government was going after the mafia. It's so similar.
Spoof calls and make it come out and look at like something else so that people don't really know who's calling. And so spam risk Egypt, I don't know who thought of that, but that's how the call from the President of the United States is going to come up so that if anyone ever seizes the phone or looks at the phone, or if there's a reporter nearby and they can see the phone, it's going to come up Egypt. It's not going to come up President of the United States. I guess, maybe that's why they do things like that, but it seemed really fishy and sketchy to me. What about you, Popop?
Have you heard about NAD+? It's a molecule in every cell of your body, and it's...
Okay. We're not watching the ad. Sorry, guys. Sorry. No Adorino. But I do think we got the general gist of what's going on. A lot of redacted stuff. I do think that there's going to be some pretty good memes coming out of the like documents. Don't get me wrong. Like there'll probably be some damning stuff, but unfortunately, like I said before, I don't actually see it having much of an effect. Like even if they didn't redact so much, I don't know if it has much of an effect. The American people, even a lot of Dems, look at the Russia collusion stuff, despite it being ironclad, as like a tree not worth barking up. They look at it as like, maybe the right's right. Maybe conservatives and Trump supporters were right about it being legal lawfare, considering Trump never ended up in prison. But multiple of his campaign were found guilty of colluding with Russia for his campaign and went to jail for it. So it's like, because it wasn't Trump, they're able to so effectively gaslight Americans into thinking it was a nothing burger when it was actually fucking a massive. And because no one is brave enough to be behind putting Trump behind bars, responsible for it, because they probably feel like they'll never be safe again because Trump supporters are insane and retributive about these types of things. I don't think Trump's ever going to end up behind bars. And if he doesn't end up behind bars, then people will easily be gaslit into the belief that must have been a nothing burger, must have been just going after Trump for caring about the American people. There could be a case where this stuff makes Trump look better to some middle ground voters, because stuff like this makes it seem like, well, if the government's going after Trump, then, man, he must just really care about the American people. The government just hates the American people, never does anything good. So if they're going after Trump, then he must be the good guy. He's draining that swamp. Too many Americans think this way. Like I said before, Americans would elect Hitler himself, his corpse, his ghost, whatever you want to say, just literally Hitler, if it meant that gas prices would be $1 a gallon lower for 4 years. They would elect Hitler. Like, by a landslide, they would. It's a terrifying thought, but it's true. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this segment, you found it entertaining, educational, or enjoyable, then please consider leaving a like. Even if you're watching live or after the fact, every thumbs up goes a long way to, in real time, boost my channel in the algorithm and forces YouTube to push my content out to more people. So I really do appreciate it. You can also comment down below to compound the benefit of liking. It really helps a ton and means a lot to me, so I really appreciate it. And of course, you can also subscribe and ring the bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload new videos, because believe me, they won't do that unless you hit those buttons. And of course, if you want to see more from me on other platforms, you can follow my social medias, linked down below in the description. And of course, if you want to, be a part of my main hub of my community, you can join my fan Discord, a link down below in the description too. I host game events, call-in streams, and watch parties every week on Friday. We've been doing watch parties a lot lately. In fact, right after this segment, after stream, we are going to be doing a watch party of The Walking Dead. We're going to be starting it to help get us into the Halloween month vibes. People voted on The Walking Dead, so we're gonna be walking our dead. It's gonna be a great time. We're gonna have some damn good fun today. It's gonna be nice. But yeah, I do hope to see you guys there. It's going to be a great time. And finally, if you want to support me directly, help me keep the lights on and the roof above my head here at the Xander Hall studio, then please consider dropping a dono, a sub, or a gifted sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch at the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, even if you're a lurker, thank you for watching, and have a good one.